last month we talked about verse 16, and as always, there's a continuity from one verse to another. In verse 16, what Bhagavan said was, Namandri nāledu nādedu nādankal. That means if we investigate, except we, where is time and where is place? The implication is, if we investigate ourselves, there's no time, no place, but only ourselves. We alone are what actually exists. Time and place are just an appearance that arise along with the ego. Therefore, in the next sentence, he says, Nam udumbel nāṛpadu Nāṛpadu. That means if we are a body, we will be ensnared in time and space. That is, it is only when we limit ourselves as a body, but we seem to be limited in time and space. In sleep, we are not aware of ourselves as a body, therefore we are not aware of any time or place or space or anything. So time and place come into existence along with the ego, because the ego always grasps itself as a body, and therefore when we experience ourselves as ego, we feel I'm here in this place in time, and in this place in space, and in this point in time. So that is what we are entrapped in time and space so long as we experience ourselves as a body. Then in the next sentence he says, Nam udumbo. This is where the connection between this verse and the next verse comes in, because obviously when he says Nam udumbo, the implication is, Nam udumbo means, are we a body? The implication obviously is, no, we're not a body. It's a rhetorical question, and he emphasizes this in the next two. Well, it's difficult to say then, because it's a series of clauses which can either be taken as one sentence or a series of sentences, depending on how we interpret it. But basically, what he says after that is, we are one now, then, and always, one in place, here, there, and everywhere. Therefore, there is we. Time and place do not exist. That can also be interpreted, that the words in Tamil are Indru, Andru, Endrum, Nam, Ondru. That means we are one. Indru is today or now, Andru then, Endrum always. So we are always one, the same one thing. Nadu, Ingu, Angu, Engum, on Nam. Again, Nam is implied. Ondru. We are the same one thing in space, here, there, and everywhere. So in all times, all spaces, we are always the same one reality. Therefore, and then the words nāڵ il can either be taken as a separate sentence, meaning time and space do not exist, or they can be taken as a relative clause qualifying nam. So we can either take it as, taking both meanings together, we can say therefore, well, the implication is, what Bhagavan says is namundu, which literally means there is we. But the implication is we alone exist. Time and space do not exist. Or it can be taken, we alone exist, the timeless and placeless we. Bhagavan's emphasizing what is actually real is only ourself. And time and space don't exist at all. That's the implication of verse 16, which we discussed in more detail last time. But the point I wanted to emphasize here is, in the middle of this verse, he asked this question, Namudumbo, are we a body? The implication is, no, we are not a body. But in verse 17, he gives he follows on this topic, and he says something rather surprising, because, as I said, the implication in that verse is that we are not a body. But here he says, he begins verse 17 by saying, uḍaṉāṉē. That means, uḍaṉāṉ means the body is I. uḍaṉāṉē, the A is, it can either be emphasizing, so it can mean the body is certainly I, or the body is actually I. It can also, that is, this suffix A is an intensifier in Tamil, and it can either be expressing certainty, or it can be expressing exclusiveness. So it implies both. The body is certainly I, or body is actually I. It also implies the body is only I. So in the previous verse, he implied we are not the body, and here he says the body is only I. But there's a very deep reason for this. So that's just the first two words of the verse. I'll now begin to go through the whole verse, and then we'll understand what is the point Bhagavan is making here, which is a very important and deep point he's making in this verse. The first sentence is uḍaṉāṉē, taṉṉai uṇarārkku, uṇarndārkku. Taṉṉai uṇarārkku means for those who do not know themselves. Uṇarndārkku means for those who have known, implies have known themselves. So both for those who do not know what they actually are, and for those who do know what they actually are, for those who don't know their real nature and those who do know their real nature, the body is certainly I, or the body is actually I, the body is only I. This could give the impression that Bhagavan is saying, oh, for the jnani, the body is I. But he's saying this for he's got a much deeper meaning, which he clarifies in the next sentence. One important point to note is here, he says uḍaṉāṉē. He doesn't say uḍaḻē. He doesn't say uḍaḻē would mean the body is certainly I, or only the body is I, or body alone is I. He doesn't say that. The emphasis is put on nāṉē. The body is certainly I. The body is only I. It's nothing other than I, in other words. In the Kalivemba version of this verse, he extended this first sentence by adding before the first word, which is uḍal, which means body, a demonstrative particle, e, which means this. So uḍal means this body. And before that, he put that preceded by a relative clause, unum which is unum. And unum can be interpreted in several ways in this context. In Tamil, the letter u by itself and the word un both mean flesh or meat. But that's actually only the word un rather than unum, but we can take it that unum is here referring to that word un. So we can interpret unum as which is flesh, which is fleshy, or which is composed of flesh. That's the one implication of unum. Unum is also a Tamil form of the Sanskrit term una, which means lacking, deficient, or defective. And in Tamil, it also, perhaps by association with the Tamil word it also means a corpse or a carcass. That is, a corpse is a defective body. It's a body without life. So all these meanings are actually implied here. It's we can't, all these meanings are appropriate here, so we can't pin it down and say Bhagavan meant only this meaning. So it's best to take all the meanings together, and we can take this Kalivemba extension and the first word of the verse, which is unumam iv uḍal, to mean this deficient and defective body, which is composed of flesh like a corpse. So this corpse-like body, defective body, deficient body. One of the meanings, okay, so along with this extension, the whole sentence is unamam iv uḍaṉāṉē, taṉṉai uṇarārkku, uṇarndārkku, which means for those who do not know themselves and for those who have known themselves, this deficient and defective body, which is composed of flesh like a corpse, is actually I, or is only I. Among these various meanings of unam, as I say, all are appropriate, but one has a particular significance. That's if we take it in the sense of the Sanskrit word una, meaning deficient, and in the Sanskrit sense of that term, in the sense of deficient or lacking, or it can also mean less than. In this sense, we take it in this sense, it is connected with what Bhagavan says in the following sentences, because in the subsequent sentences of this verse, he points out that the difference between those who do not know themselves and those who do know them, who have known themselves, is that for the former, the body alone is I, whereas for the latter, the body is also I. So because I shines without limit. Therefore, when he said that the body is deficient or lacking, he's implying it's not the infinite whole. The body is finite. It's a small part of the whole. What actually exists is only I. So I shines without limit. So there's nothing other than I. So in that sense, for the jnani, the body is also I. But since it's deficient, since it's only a small part of the whole, it's not what I actually is. The ajnani, the one who doesn't know their real nature, mistakes the body alone is I. We all experience. I feel I'm sitting here in London. Each of you feel you're sitting there in Houston. Why do you feel you're in that? And we all feel today is Saturday, the 2nd of June, 2018. So each one of us is feel we are located in a particular time and a particular place. Why is this? Because we experience a body as I, and we experience only this body as I. We don't experience outside the limits of this body. It's all other, it's all anya. The world seems to be other than ourselves. We are just a small part of the whole. But anyway, we'll expand on this more later. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that one of the meanings of unam is this meaning of deficient or lacking or less than. It's less from the whole. It's not the whole. It's something finite rather than infinite. Then in the next two sentences, Bhagavan points out what is the difference between those who know themselves and those who do not know themselves. In the next sentence, he says, aḻavē nān taṉṉuṇarārkku, which means for those who do not know themselves, I is only the extent of the body. Aḻavē means extent or limit. So uḍaľļadu is the limit of the body or the extent of the body. This body is some 5 foot 10 inches or whatever tall. It is it's so fat or lean or whatever. This is the extent of me. Beyond the limits of this body, that is not me. So for the ajnani, they is aware of I as only to the limit of this body, and not only is the extent of this body limited in space. It's a certain size in a certain place in space. It's also limited in time. This body was born 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, and a few years hence, it's going to be no more. It has a limited span of existence within within time as within space. So this is the experience of the jnani. For the jnani, I is limited to the body. It doesn't extend beyond the body. Whereas in the next sentence he said, what is the jnani's experience of I? So that in the next sentence he says, uḍaluḻḷē, that means within the body, taṉṉuṇarndārkku. That means for those who have known themselves within the body, that's in this lifetime, or so long as we are practicing self-investigation, we feel that investigation is going on within the limits of this body. It's not somewhere out there that we are investigating ourselves. It's here within this body, because we experience this body as ourselves. So Bhagavan says it's not literally true, but metaphorically you can say it's true. But the jnani knows themselves within the body. But what is the jnani's experience of themselves? Ellai oḷirum nāṉ. That means ellai means without limit. Tān means oneself, oḷirum means shines, and nāṉ means I. So the meaning of the whole sentence is, for those who have known themselves within the body, oneself, I, shines without limit. That is, for the jnani, I is the one infinite whole, which alone exists, and which is therefore the sole substance of that appears as this body and as everything else. That is, if at all there is a body or any other thing, for the jnani it is nothing other than I. Because in the jnani's view, what actually exists is only I. So what we point to and say, this is my body, and this is Bhagavan's body, for Bhagavan, what we are pointing at is nothing other than himself, because he's not limited in one place. In fact, for him, there's nothing other than himself. So what we see as a body, or what we see as a world, is what Bhagavan sees as himself. Then in the final sentence of this verse, he says, iduvē iṇṉavartam bhēdameṉa. That means consider that this is the difference or consider that the difference between them is only this, or this only is the difference between them. That is it's the same I we are experiencing, that Bhagavan is experiencing, but we are experiencing this I mixed up with adjuncts. The first primary adjunct we experience ourselves as is this body. So because we've mixed ourselves with adjuncts, and we've limited ourselves to the extent of this adjunct, this body, whereas for the jnani, he is not aware of any adjuncts, he's aware only of I am. So for the jnani, I shines without limit. For the ajnani, I shines limited to the body. Because for the jnani, I shines without limit, there's nothing other than it. So if at all there's such a thing as a body, that is also I. So for the ajnani, body alone is I. For the jnani, body is also I. That if at all there is such a thing as a body in their view, which, because we take Bhagavan to be, because we take ourselves to be a body, we take Bhagavan to be a body. So we say, oh, Bhagavan is answering questions of devotees. Bhagavan goes to the kitchen and cooks, helps with the cooking. Bhagavan writes Uḻḷadu Nāṛpadu and nāṉē and all these works. So because we see that body as Bhagavan, we mistake Bhagavan to be that body. So from our perspective, Bhagavan is the body, but Bhagavan says he's not only this body is also I. But this is only, that's a concession to our point of view, because as he clarified elsewhere, for example, in Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu in one verse, he compares the jnani's experience of body to the experience of someone sleeping in a cart. Someone who's sleeping in a cart is not aware whether the cart is, this is Bhagavan, they're referring to a bullock cart. A person sleeping in a bullock cart is not aware whether there are bullocks pulling the bullock cart, or whether the bullocks have come to a standstill, or whether the bullocks have been unyoked. It makes no difference to the person who's sleeping in the cart, assuming they're sleeping soundly. Likewise, for the jnani is not aware of whether the body is active or inactive, in samadhi, in sleep, in dream, or whatever. This is all exists only in the view of the ajnani, not in the view of the jnani. But because we see the body and world, Bhagavan has written this verse and the next verse. In this verse he says, yes, for the jnani, the body is also I. That's what we see as Bhagavan's body. For Bhagavan, that is also I, because there's nothing that is not I, because he alone exists. And in the next verse, the next verse is parallel to this in many respects. He says, for the jnani and for the ajnani, the world is, in the next verse he says, for those who do not have knowledge, implying self-knowledge, and for those who have, the world is real. For those who do not know, reality is to the extent of the world. That is, we take this world alone to be real. Whereas for the jnani, for those who have known, reality pervades, devoid of form, as the adhara, the support for the world. Like the screen in a cinema, what is real is only the screen. The picture is just a fleeting appearance on it. So for what Bhagavan sees is only that underlying support, which is the pure self-awareness that he actually is. So whereas we see the names and forms of the world as real, he sees the substance of the world, which is pure self-awareness. That alone is real. So in a sense, Bhagavan is being a little bit humorous in this verse and the next verse, in verse 17 and 18, because all his teachings he's saying the body is not I, and the world is unreal. But in this verse, he seems to be saying the body is certainly I, and the world is certainly real. But though he seems to be saying that, it has a much deeper meaning, which we can see if we read the third sentence of each of these verses, we can see that actually he means something else. We shouldn't take at face value what he says. But many people do take these things. People with less subtle understanding, they take these things as at face value, and they say, "Oh, Bhagavan has said that the world is real, even for the jnani." But that is not actually what Bhagavan is meaning. What he means is, for the jnani, what is real is only himself, only our real nature. That alone is real. Atma-swarupa alone is real, as he says in nāṇḍē. He says in one sentence, in the seventh paragraph, first sentence of the seventh paragraph, yathātamai uḻḷadu ekāpma-sarupam andre. That means what actually exists is only Atma-swarupa, the real nature of ourself. So that is Bhagavan's experience. Since that alone exists, it is the infinite whole. So if at all there's anything else seems to exist, that is not other than that. So Bhagavan saying that the body is I and the world is real is a bit like saying the snake is a rope. It's correct to say the snake is a rope. It's not correct to say the rope is a snake. So we have to understand that often Bhagavan talks in a very subtle and nuanced manner, and it's very easy to misunderstand him unless we think very carefully about what he says. That's why there are so many things recorded in other books that Bhagavan didn't write himself, but were recorded by other people, if those other people didn't understand the nuances in what Bhagavan said, their recordings often come out wrong. It's not really reflecting what Bhagavan meant. This is why we always have to read other things that Bhagavan hasn't written himself with a pinch of salt, and use our, based on our understanding, the understanding we can gain of Bhagavan's, the basic principles of Bhagavan's teaching by studying works like Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, we can then judge where the other recordings, where that is what Bhagavan might have said, or where Bhagavan would have actually said something a little bit different to that. Because obviously when people record from memory what has been said, they can only record what they understood of what was said. So if they didn't understand Bhagavan correctly, they'll not record it so correctly. So, but we can understand from verses like this, but often Bhagavan expresses himself in a very deep and subtle and nuanced manner. We have to understand that, not just what the words seem to say at first glance, but what Bhagavan is actually pointing at. Bhagavan is actually very clear, but we have to think carefully about what he says in order to not misunderstand it. Because words are inadequate for expressing the truth, but is beyond words and beyond thought. So Bhagavan often speaks in a very simple and often very metaphorical way. So we have to understand where he's talking. We shouldn't take the metaphors literally. We have to see what is behind the words, what Bhagavan's intention is. So, as Bhagavan said, his teachings are an open secret. But in order to see the secret, our eyes have to be open. We have to see very carefully. Read his teachings with discrimination, with viveka, with carefully considering the meaning of each word and understanding exactly what Bhagavan is pointing at.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
So from this verse, it follows that so strictly speaking, the neti concept is wrong, right?
Well, no, neti is not wrong. Neti is not a spiritual practice. Neti is the intellectual analysis that is required. This body, now we experience ourselves as I am this body, I am this mind. Neti is asking us to discriminate. If this body were actually what I am, if I and body were one and the same thing, I couldn't be aware of I without being aware of body. But are we always aware? We're always aware of ourselves. We're always aware of I. Whether we're awake, dreaming, or asleep, we're always aware of I. But are we always aware of this body? No. In dream, we're aware of ourselves as some other body. In sleep, we're not aware of any body at all. We're only aware of ourselves. So the fact that we can be aware of ourselves in the absence of this body, or when we're not aware of this body, is clear proof that this body is not I. Likewise, the mind seems to be, the thinking goes on, the function of thinking, which is the nature of the mind, goes on in waking and dream, but where is it in sleep? Likewise, our intellect, our power of judgment and discrimination. We may be very, very brilliant, have a very brilliant intellect. What happens to that intellect when we go to sleep? It's no longer there. There is no intellect in sleep. So also chittam, our will. Where is our will in sleep? In waking state, we have so many desires, cares, concerns, fears, all these things. What happens to all these things when we go to sleep? All these things disappear. There's no fear in sleep. There's no desire in sleep. There's nothing. All that exists in sleep is I. So the fact that I exist in sleep in isolation from all these things that now seem to be I means that none of these things are I. So this critical self-analysis, which is what is called in traditional texts as neti. This is the preliminary manana that we need to know. Because if we don't reflect like this, when Bhagavan says attend to I, investigate yourself, if this body is myself, then what do? I start cutting up the body, looking inside, seeing what it is. I take a brain scan, I do a MRI. Is that going to get me any closer to knowing what I am? No. It may give information about this body. It may say that the brain is slowly getting senile or something, but it can't tell me who I am, because I exist whether this body is there or not. So the neti is an essential prerequisite for Atma-vichara, but it is not Atma-vichara. We can go on analyzing like this and writing big volumes on philosophy about why I'm not this body, but that is not bringing us any closer to experiencing ourselves as we are. Actually experience what we are, we need to turn our attention within. That is what Bhagavan emphasized. The neti and even this soham bhavana, thinking I am infinite consciousness, I am Brahman, I'm this and that. That Bhagavan says that may be an aid, but is it vichara? No, it is not vichara. But in order to know what we actually are, we have to turn our mind within.
So Michael,
there are texts where these things are. There's a text called Ribu Gita, in which this sort of neti and soham bhavana is repeated, like in when children go to primary school or kindergarten, they first learn A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or R, E, E, U, depending on the language. We all learn the letters of the alphabet. We learn the numbers. We learn the timetable. We learn these by rote at first, so that we can easily memorize them later. Ribu Gita and such texts are useful preliminary texts for digging into the mind these basic principles. But just learning by rote isn't real understanding. Real understanding comes with manana. So we have to think, why is it said that I'm not this body? Why is it said that I'm only consciousness? What does it mean when it says what sort of consciousness am I? This mind is a form of consciousness. Am I this mind? No, there's something deeper, a deeper form of consciousness. So we need to think very deeply and do very deep manana. So as preliminary sravana, texts like Ribu Gita are very good. It gives people at least some faith. Oh, the holy sastras have said that I'm Brahman, I'm not this body. So we get some trust in that. But it doesn't become a strong conviction until we think very deeply about it and understand why it's said like that, why I cannot be this body, why I cannot be this mind, why I cannot be this awareness that appears in waking and disappears in sleep. I am the underlying awareness, not awareness of something, but the pure awareness that underlies that. We're aware of things only in waking and dream. So that awareness of things, it comes and goes. That is what is called chittabhasa, the seeming awareness, but not real awareness, the reflection of awareness, the lightness of awareness, semblance of awareness. But the awareness that is our real nature is the awareness that shines in all three states, including sleep. In sleep, we're not aware of anything. So we have to, very, very deep manana is necessary. But even merely by thinking about these things, we can't get a deep and subtle understanding. Our manana has to be illumined by the clarity that we get by trying to put it into practice. The more we try to turn our attention within, the subtler our intellect will become, the purer our will become. We'll get chitta-suddhi. And along with chitta-suddhi comes clarity of intellect. And that's all gained by practice. And with these things, when we read the same teachings, reflect on them, the depth of meaning will become so much clearer to us.
So from a practical standpoint, what you're saying, the neti, the not this, is not going to be of much use, right? I mean, like
it's an essential prerequisite, but it doesn't take us very far.
Right.
If we never learned ABC, we'd have difficulty, for example, looking for words in dictionary. Okay, nowadays we can, if we want to check on the meaning of a word, we can just Google it. But in the old days, we needed to refer to a dictionary. We needed to know the alphabetical order. And there's so many things for which we need to know the alphabet. And we also need to know our times table. What the basic times table that we learn at primary school is very handy for us later, because without even thinking of it, 6 times 6, 36, we know it immediately. It's there imprinted in our mind. So in that way, and also to understand all other concepts, we've got to have basic mathematical knowledge. We've got to have basic knowledge of reading and writing. On top of this basic knowledge, other knowledge is built. If we never learned to read and write, the knowledge, so much knowledge that we have gained, we wouldn't have gained. So these things are prerequisite. In the same way, neti is an essential prerequisite, but it doesn't take us very far. You can't, but by learning your times table, you can't earn a PhD. You've got to do a lot more than that. You've got to go much, much deeper into mathematics to become, if you want to get a mathematics PhD, or if you want to get a PhD in some other subject, you have to, you have to go way beyond the basics that you learn in primary school. So all neti and all these things have their place, and they are essential, but they don't take us very far. We want to, what will take us up to our destination is only this path of Atma-vichara.
Ravi, you have a question?
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah.
So once the Jnani has established his understanding in Atma Sarupa, how does he look at Nama Rupa, the manifest world, which is then just a mental projection? He's aware of that, he or she.
Well,
Everything is Brahman. How does he do that?
Firstly, for a Jnani, it's not just a matter of understanding. Understanding is a function of the intellect. It's not, we can understand, we can read Bhagavan's books, and we can understand, yes, I'm not this limited body. I am infinite self-awareness without limit. We can understand all this, but this is all a function of the intellect. The Jnani, the jnana is not an understanding. It's a clear, it's an absolute clarity of self-awareness. And we need understanding to understand one. We need, it's not a, what actually exists is only one. So it doesn't actually require understanding. To understand the world, we need to have a lot of understanding. We need to study physics, biology, chemistry, sociology, politics, art, all these things. But however much we study, we're not going to understand, but we'll understand little aspects of the world, but not fully. So that's all a function of intellect. Jnana is that intellect is whose intellect? It's the ego's intellect. The I that says I have understood, that is the ego. I, Michael, have understood, but if I walk across a road when there's a busy road, I'm likely to get hit by a car. So who is it who's understood that? It's I, the I that says I am Michael. So the understanding, will, mind, these are all functions of the ego. That which has a will, that which has understanding, that which is aware of the thoughts that are arising in the mind. That is the ego. So for the jnani, that ego, which is the well, for the jnani, there is no such thing as ego at all. By investigating ourselves, but that is by the, who is to investigate? It's the ego obviously has to investigate itself. When the ego investigates itself, it dissolves and disappears in the pure infinite clarity of self-awareness. Then it is known what actually exists is only that infinite clarity of self-awareness, nothing else. So there never was any ego. That is the jnani's experience. So for the jnani, there is no world to see. There is no ego to see the world. That is why Bhagavan said the ultimate experience is not that the world is a false appearance, which is what Bhagavan teaches us in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu and such texts. That is called Vivartavada. Vivarta means false appearance or illusory appearance, illusion. So that's what Bhagavan teaches. All this is an illusory appearance. But that is not his experience. His experience is ajata. There is no appearance whatsoever. Because to whom does all this appear? It appears to me, to this ego. When the ego investigates itself and disappears in the absolute clarity of self-awareness, then nothing remains for anything to appear to. So that's why Bhagavan often used to say, jnana me jnani. That is, jnana alone is the jnani. Jnana there means pure self-awareness. The very nature of the jnani is nothing but that pure and infinite self-awareness. All finite things appear in the view of the finite ego. That which is infinite is known only by that which is infinite. That's what Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. Kanalal. That means, can what is seen be otherwise in nature than the eye that sees it? So if we limit ourselves as a body, name and form of a body, what we see is names and forms. If we turn our attention within and see our real nature as the formless infinite whole, what we will see is only the formless and infinite whole, nothing other than that.
Thank you, Michael.
Was that an adequate answer?
Right, yeah. So essentially what I understand is it's only in the view of jnani that
Yes.
the manifest world exists.
Yes.
View of the jnani, everything is essentially self-awareness.
That's why when people ask Bhagavan about, but the jnani says, people often say, but Bhagavan, you're talking, you're answering our questions. You go to the kitchen in the morning to grind the idli paste. You cut off the edges of newspapers so that you can write verses on it. You're doing all these things, so you must be aware of this world just like we are. Bhagavan said, in whose view am I doing all these things? It's not in his view, it's in our view. Why is it in our view? We mistake ourselves to be this body, so we mistake Bhagavan to be that body.
Yeah.
So all the actions of the jnani exist only in the view of the ajnani. And it's also sometimes said, for example, the jnani has burnt off all agamya and sanchita. What remains for the jnani to experience is only prarabdha. Till the death of the body, the jiva mukta will continue experiencing the prarabdha. But Bhagavan says even that isn't true. Because from our point, Bhagavan sometimes said even about himself, when people ask, Bhagavan, should I renounce my family and come and live here? Bhagavan said, no, it's not necessary. But then why did you do that, Bhagavan? Why did you renounce? Bhagavan said, it was my prarabdha, so I left home and I came here. That's my prarabdha. Your prarabdha may be something different. Whatever is your prarabdha, that will happen. So Bhagavan is talking as if he has a prarabdha, but he very, very clearly says when when a husband with 3 wives die, all 3 wives become widows. Likewise, when the ego dies, all the 3 karmas cease to exist, because they exist only for the ego. So for the jnani, but though for the body of the jnani that exists in our view, there seems to be a prarabdha, for the jnani himself, or himself, herself, whatever, I mean, the jnani is actually itself, it's beyond gender. For the jnani itself, there is no such thing as prarabdha. Because there was never anyone who ever did any agamya, and no one who ever experienced, who was there to experience the fruit of that agamya. So it's all only in our view. So all that is said about the state of jiva mukti exists only in our view. Because actually, when the ego is destroyed by the fire of jnana, body and world are destroyed along with it. Jiva mukti implies that the jnani is still living in the body. But in whose view is that? So jiva mukti is a state that exists only in the view of the ajnani. The actual state of the jnani is better described as videha mukti. Videha mukti means without body. Generally, the general belief is that if a person attains jnana in the lifetime of this body, they are jiva mukta up till the death of the body, and then only when the body dies do they become videha mukti. But actually, the jnani has left the body at the time that at the time that it left the ego, because the ego is the only connection we have with body. So Bhagavan has no connection with that body that we take to be Bhagavan at all. But by the divine, by divine grace, the infinite love that our real nature has for itself manifested in the form of Bhagavan's body, and that infinite clarity that is our real nature shone through that body, giving these teachings. So we can't say that body isn't Bhagavan. For us, that body is Bhagavan. For us, it was Bhagavan who wrote Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, it was Bhagavan who wrote Nāṇya. This is all real for us, so long as we rise as this ego. That's why we have it is Bhagavan translated one verse. It's I think his translated version of it is in verse 39 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anabandham. Though you can practice, but Advaita should always be experienced in the heart, never put into practice. Though it's appropriate to practice Advaita in all the 3 worlds, it's never appropriate to practice Advaita towards Guru. What that means is, all the 3 worlds means Brahma Loka, Vaikuntha, and Kailasha. We can go to Brahma Loka and say to Brahma, you and I are one. We can go to Vaikuntha and say to Vishnu, you and I are one. We can go to Shiva Loka and say to Shiva, you and I are one. If you can climb up to the top of Mount Kailash. But we cannot come to Bhagavan and say, you and I are one. Why? Because Guru, actually, it is Bhagavan alone who appears as all the 3 murtis. But when he appears as Guru, the function of Guru is above the function of all the 3 murtis, above all the gods. Because gods have a specific function. Brahma's there to create this world and give us all this trouble. Vishnu's there to sustain this world. And Shiva's there to destroy this world. But the function of Guru has nothing to do with the world. He is come to destroy the ego, which is the real cause of the appearance of creation, sustenance, and destruction. So the function of Guru is beyond the function of all the 3 murtis. So we obviously, so long as, I mean, even Murgana, who had completely surrendered himself to Bhagavan, and in his heart he was one with Bhagavan. There's no difference, truly speaking. Their name and form obviously is different, but in outward behavior, Muruganar always acted as a humble devotee of Bhagavan. Even after Bhagavan left the body and people came to Muruganar and said, Swami, I want to take you as my guru, Muruganar would get angry. He would say, why would you want to take me as guru? Bhagavan is there. Bhagavan is the guru of all of us. There's no need for any guru other than Bhagavan. Bhagavan is shining in the heart of everyone. He himself has sung, Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavar Vijaguhail Arivairami Paramatman Arunachala Ramanam. That's Arunachala Ramanam is the supreme Paramatma, the supreme self, shining as Arivu, as pure awareness in the hearts of all beings, from Hari down to the smallest ant. So we don't need any guru other than Bhagavan. Bhagavan is always available to us. Outwardly, his teachings are available to us. If we want physical satsang, we can go around Arunachala, or we can go to Ramanashram and go around his samadhi. But the real satsang, I mean, better than the physical satsang is the mental satsang, reading and thinking deeply about his teachings. But the best satsang of all is putting his teachings into practice by turning our attention within. Because where does he dwell? He's always dwelling in our heart, clearly as aham iti kuta, what's it in, I've forgotten what the Sanskrit verse is, that verse, Hridaya Gurha Madhye. He's always shining in our heart as our own self, shining as I am I. So there's no need to go to any guru other than Bhagavan. He's always available to us.
That was a good explanation of. I always used to wonder if when, even after more, kind of everybody knew Muruganar at some point was self-realized. And even Bhagavan says in Guru Ashokove, he has the experience of seeing the whole world as his self. And I used to wonder how come he continued to act in a dualistic manner with Bhagavan, that reverence, that respect.
Yes.
And that verse 39 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu nails it there, it clearly explains. And you brought it to light. No matter what, you don't practice Advaita with the Guru.
Yeah, I think there's a verse in Guru Vachakavai, if I remember correctly, in which Bhagavan says, but a husband and wife, in private they are one, but in society, according to Indian custom, the wife will always act subservient to the husband. Though they are one at heart, the wife will always act likewise. Though the true disciple who has surrendered himself or herself completely to Bhagavan is one with Bhagavan, in outward, for society, for outward behavior, they will always behave subservient.
But in the heart, it's one and the same.
Yeah.
Michael.
Yes.
About neti, you had just mentioned that it is an essential part. It is a prerequisite.
Yes, an essential prerequisite.
But until now, I wasn't even aware of it. So if somebody were to do Atma-vichara, it is so self-contained, even the prerequisite is there. You don't have to be aware of it. Right?
Well, no, we have already, all of us have already done the neti, because if we haven't done neti, and neti doesn't mean repeating, I am not this, I am that. Understanding that what we are is not this body, not this mind, but the awareness that is behind all these things. Understanding that at an intellectual level is necessary, because otherwise, when Bhagavan says investigate yourself, we can go and stand in front of a mirror and look at our face. Is that self-investigation? No, obviously it's not, because this body is not our self. What we actually are is just awareness. So it's turning our attention back toward the awareness. That's why Bhagavan says, to whom are all these things? Well, it doesn't matter how many thoughts or phenomena appear. What we need to do is to investigate to whom are all these things. That means who is the one who is aware of all these things? We have to turn our attention back towards the seer, away from the seen. This is Drisya Viveka. We've got to distinguish the perceiver from the perceived. Anything perceived cannot be ourself. So this body is something we perceive. The mind, all the thoughts and minds are things we perceive. But what we are is that which is perceiving all these. Even that is not true, but we need to understand as far as that for beginning the practice of Atma-vichara. Once we understand what we need to know is who is the perceiver, then when we investigate the perceiver, we will find even the perceiver is not our real nature. When the perceiver perceives itself, what remains is pure self-awareness, which never perceives anything. That is our real nature. So it doesn't have to go by the label neti, but we all need to understand these basic principles before we can even begin to practice this. Of course, initially our understanding is fairly superficial, but we need to begin with some basic understanding. Then as we go deeper into the practice, our understanding will become deeper and deeper.
Michael, this is a rhetorical question, but this practice of, not this, and taking it back to who is getting these thoughts, how long does it need to happen? Because it's very clear that's the case. But the past vasana seems to be coming back, and sometimes it seems more unrealistic that those vasanas will go away.
Bhagavan has already answered your question very clearly and explicitly in Nāṇya. Tondru totu varu kindra vishaya vasanaigal aḷavē kadal alegal pol tondrinum adveyavam sarupa dhyanam kalamba arinduvidam. That's though these vishaya vasanas, all these vishaya vasanas which come from the ancient past, though they rise in countless numbers like waves in the ocean, they will all be destroyed when sarupa dhyana becomes more and more intense. That is the first sentence of the 10th paragraph. In the first sentence of the next paragraph, the 11th paragraph, he precisely answers your questions. Manatin kan iduvē vishaya vasanaigal irukindranavo aduvē nāna ennam vicharanayam vendum. That is, so long as vishaya vasanas exist in the mind, so long the investigation, who am I, is necessary. So the whole problem, what are vishaya vasanas? Vishaya vasanas are not, they are elements of our will. We've got so many desires. We want to, there's so many things we want to enjoy, there's so many things we want to avoid. So all our likes and dislikes, our desires and fears, the seed of all these passions are vishaya vasanas. Vishaya means phenomena. Vasana means the propensity, it implies the propensity to experience phenomena. Because we are under the delusion that we attain happiness from external objects, from we're facing some financial difficulties. If I get some money, if I get a better pay, if I get a pay rise, or if or if this the bank clears my loan, or if I can somehow or other get out of this financial difficulty, then I'll be happy. If I get my car's not as nice as my neighbor's car, if I get a better car, then I'll be happy, like my neighbor. In this way, the mind continues multiplying all its needs. Actually, what we need for living is food, clothing, and shelter. Pretty basic. But we've made our lives very complicated. We've created so many needs for ourselves nowadays. Can any of us live nowadays without mobile phone, without computer? All these things which 30, 40 years ago, none of us had, and none of us were any of the worse for not having it. Our life has created all these as necessities now. So this is the nature of Maya. It's constantly multiplying the desires and the perceived need for all these things. So Vishaya vasanas are the force of our own outgoing will, our desire to experience things other than ourselves. So how these Vishaya vasanas came about, because we made wrong choices in the past. Because in the past we were deluded to think that if we acquire more wealth, if we live longer, if we have a more beautiful wife, if we have more children, if our sons get better education, if our daughters marry well, the desires are endless. Even in a very simple, relatively primitive society, people have, nowadays there's so many things available for us to desire, but even in a primitive society, people are still having their small desires and ambitions. This is the nature of the mind, because we think happiness comes from external things. So because of this, we've made wrong choices in the past. All our agamya karmas happen because of wrong choices we've made. And all that we are now experiencing as prarabdha is the fruit of those agamya karmas, which we did because of our wrong choices in the past. So since we've created these vasanas by our own wrong choices, we can destroy them only by making correct choices now. What is the best choice that we can make now? Is to turn our attention within. That is why Bhagavan says, of all the types of spiritual, there's so many spiritual practices. If we do nishkarmiya karmas, puja, japa, dhyana, with genuine love for God and without desire for any thing we expect to gain thereby, that will purify our mind to a certain extent. That's what Bhagavan says in verses 3 to 7 of Upadesha. But in verse 8 he says, what is the best of all, implying what is the most purifying of all the practices we can do, Ananya bhava. Ananya bhava means meditating on what is not other. What is not other? We are not other than ourselves. Everything is other than ourselves. Even if we take God to be a name and form, that is Anya bhava. We're taking God to be something other than ourselves. Rather than taking God to be other than ourselves, understanding that He is I, and therefore meditating on I alone, meditating on nothing other than I, that is Ananya bhava. And that Bhagavan says, Anatinam uttamam, that is the best of all. In what sense is it best of all? The whole subject from verses 3 up to verse 8, Bhagavan is talking about purifying the mind. How to purify the mind. So more purifying than the actions done by body are actions done by speech. So japa is better than puja. And better than the loud japa, the soft japa is better. Better than the soft japa is mental japa, which is type of dhyana. And better than any japa, other than mental japa, which is itself dhyana, dhyana is better, because it's like the body is a relatively gross instrument of action. Well, speech is a subtler instrument. Mind is a still subtler instrument. So meditation is the best of all. But better even than meditation on God as something other than ourselves, meditation on God as I, as ourself alone. Meditation on God is not other than ourself. In other words, meditation on ourself alone, that is the most purifying of all. How is it most purifying? Because it's going directly against the Vishaya vasanas. Supposing we are practicing dualistic bhakti. We love Krishna, so we sing Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, and we get intoxicated in that Krishna bhakti. That's all very good, because all the other vasanas, the vasanas of desire and fear and all these things, are slowly being replaced by the vasana of Krishna bhakti. And because the more we love Krishna, the more we'll trust him, and the more we trust him, the less we have to fear. So slowly, slowly, that bhakti brings us to the path of surrender. So in that way, by strengthening our bhakti vasana, our propensity to devotional tendencies, in that way we are replacing one type of vasana with a better type of vasana, a more favorable type of vasana, and a vasana where we're focusing on one thing. We care only about Krishna. I don't care about any other gods. Only Krishna is my God. Krishna is the supreme God. Don't care about Shiva or anyone else. Krishna alone. So one-pointedness. So that all the will is being, all the love in our heart is being focused on one. So that strong vasana of Krishna bhakti is replacing all these other vasanas. And then we think, oh, Krishna taught Bhagavad Gita. What did he teach in Bhagavad Gita? And we go to Bhagavad Gita and we see, what did Krishna teach there? He says, taṉṉai uparamēt. Slowly, slowly take your mind away from other things and turn the mind within. Because aham atma gudakesha, I am the atma gudakesha, shining in the heart of all. So slowly from our Krishna bhakti, we come to this swapna bhakti. But what is best of all is this swapna bhakti, this meditating on whatever name and form of God we love, or Bhagavan, or whoever it may be, meditating, understanding that he is shining in our heart as I am, meditating upon him. That is the most purifying of all. Why? Because even when we're meditating on the name and form, the love for that name and form is replacing the desire for all other things. But still, it's that's still a desire for something other than ourselves. But when we try to turn our attention within, at any moment we have a choice. Thoughts of phenomena constantly appearing in our awareness. Do we attend to these things, or do we attend to the one who is aware of them? If we have so much love to attend to the one who's aware of them, if we're constantly turning our attention back within, that will weaken our outgoing vasanas, our Vishaya vasanas, and it will strengthen our Sat vasana, our love just to be. So this is how the mind gets purified. So the most purifying of all spiritual practices is this practice of Atma-vichara. And not only is it the most purifying, it's the only practice that can purify our mind completely. Because what is the root impurity in the mind? Whose vasanas are they? Who has all these vasanas? Even the love for Krishna, who has this vasana? This love. I do. So the root of all vasanas is the ego. And what is the nature of the ego? It's this false self-awareness, I am this body. So this tendency, this propensity to experience ourselves as a body, that is the root of all other vasanas. So in order to achieve vasanakshaya, we have to root out the ego itself. In other words, vasanakshaya and manonasa, they're one and the same thing. So we've got to destroy this ego. So that we can do only by Atma-vichara, because the ego is a wrong knowledge of ourself, an erroneous self-awareness, an awareness of ourself as a body as opposed to what we really are. We can eradicate this ego only by self-investigation. So not only is it the most purifying in the sense that it brings about the purification of the mind in the most direct and rapid manner, but it's the only sadhana, but will purify our mind completely. And what is a perfectly pure mind? Is no mind at all. Because when we destroy the root of all impurity, the ego, the first impurity, what remains? There's no such thing as mind at all. Manamena mondrile undi para. Neva manasam.
Thank you, Michael. I think
Bhagavan's teachings are such perfect teachings he's given us, so simple. But why I was stressing this point now is it's all a matter of the choices we make. We've made wrong choices in the past, thereby we've accumulated all these Vishaya vasanas. By making correct choices, of all the correct choices, the most correct, the best of all, is the choice to turn our attention within. That will free us from all these old vasanas and give us that love for self-investigation. So it is certainly possible. Bhagavan says also in Nāṇya, eblo papiai irandalam, nan papiai irikirene, epidi kadera pokirein, endrengi arudu kondiramo, tan papi ennum ennateum, aļavē oritu, sarupa dhyanatil ukumai uļļavanaha irandal, avan nityamai urupaduvan. That is, however great a sinner we may be, however strong our Vishaya vasanas may be, whatever terrible things we've done because of our Vishaya vasanas, rather than lamenting over all these things, giving up even that thought and turning our attention within to see who am I, like clinging Srupa Dhyan Natil Ukumai, if we're steadfast in our practice of self-investigation, we will certainly be reformed, he says. Urupaduvam, in this context, it means we'll be reformed, we'll become even the most sinful person can become a great devotee by following this path of self-investigation. But our aim isn't even to become a great devotee, because if we're truly a great devotee, we'll surrender our mind completely to Bhagavan, and then we are not even a devotee. We merge back into the ocean. We merge back into the source from which we arose.
Right. Thank you, Michael, for sort of clarifying that sort of the myth out there that you have to practice some other techniques to purify your mind first and then practice Atma-vichara. But you explain that clearly, that Atma-vichara alone is sufficient. Yes. And it's best of all techniques to purify the mind.
Yes.
So as I think you said somewhere in your blog, while all of the techniques are neither sufficient nor necessary, self-enquiry is both sufficient and necessary.
They're not. Once we come to Bhagavan, nothing else is necessary. In order for us to reach the point where we reach now, all those things may have been necessary in the past. Because the very fact that we've come here means we've already, by His grace, we've already got a certain amount of chitta suddhi, or we wouldn't even be attracted to this path. So the fact that we've been attracted to this path means all those other sadhanas, we would have done them in the past, most probably.
Right. So they were necessary before, but now that we are here.
Yes, yes. Once we come to Bhagavan,
we should just pursue.
What Bhagavan says in verse 3 of Upadeshundya, Kartanu kartum nishkarmiya karmam, Karte tirti artundi para, gati vari kambikumundi para. That is, by practicing nishkarmiya karma with love for God, that will purify the mind and show the way to liberation. Gati vari kambikam. How does it show the way to liberation? It shows it by giving us that. When our mind is pure, we'll be able to recognize that we cannot, but happiness doesn't lie outside. True happiness lies only within. Even God doesn't lie outside. God is our own real nature. We'll get that clarity to understand, but in order to attain liberation, we have to turn our mind within. So we have been fortunate. We may not be so mature, such mature souls to understand this by ourselves, but we have come to Bhagavan. Bhagavan has told us this. Bhagavan has already shown us the path to liberation. So even though we may be the worst of sinners, even though we may have such strong vasanas, we can little by little by little, like as it says in Gita, as Krishna says in Gita, sane sane, slowly, slowly, mella mella, Bhagavan translated that in Tamil. Slowly, slowly, we can withdraw our mind from other things and fix it firmly in ourselves. Atma samstam manakritva.
Michael?
Yes.
Okay, so is it in our hands to draw our minds within? Because even forget the eons of past karma and the future, blah, blah, blah. Even this very moment, you're telling me to turn within. I'm trying, like, meaning, okay, close my eyes. What is it that is that awareness?
Yes.
I know I can't formulate it. I can't, because it's not a phenomenon. It doesn't have any quality. So I cannot, language cannot describe it. But yet, I know, like inherently, without having to intellectualize it, I suppose.
Yes.
Intellect not grasp it, but yet we need a very subtle, refined, incisive intellect, I suppose, to know that awareness.
Yes.
So, but we can't, I know it doesn't have objective qualities, but then how do I know? I mean, how will maybe I am it right now, but yet I don't know it. Yes.
Well, we do need, Bhagavan says in Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, in one verse he says, kuṇarndārk, that means by a very sharp intellect. In another verse he says, nūṇmatiyā, by a very subtle intellect. Intellect there doesn't mean just, he's not talking about an outward going intellect, he's talking about an inward going intellect. So there the intellect means the power of discernment. To see what we actually are, we need a very subtle and sharp and clear power of attention. How do we cultivate that? Why is our power of attention now relatively blunt and lacking in sharpness and lacking in subtlety? Because we're constantly allowing our attention to go outwards. So by trying to turn our attention within more and more, we are weakening the hold that the Vishaya vasanas have on us. We're getting more and more love to turn within. And along with that comes that clarity, which is the sharpness that Bhagavan is referring to. So it is the only way to get love, to practice Atma-vichara, is to practice Atma-vichara. How to learn to ride a bicycle? The only way to learn to ride a bicycle is to ride a bicycle. We will fall many times, but we cannot learn to ride a bicycle by reading books. We have to put it in, we have to practice it. So also with vichara, we have to practice it. And just like when we learn to ride a bicycle, at first we wobble and we fall off. Slowly, slowly, we can't even explain how. Our body and mind somehow grasp that technique of balancing ourselves. And then once we can ride a bicycle, it's second nature to us. It seems effortless to balance on a bicycle. It's not at all difficult. Likewise, on this path of self-investigation, at first we wobble a lot. But by practicing more and more, we slowly get that steadiness.
So just like I will know that when I learn the bicycle, I'll know that I got it, right? Like I no longer have a doubt whether I can ride the bicycle because I know. So when I abide more and more and more, I will know. I will not have doubt whether I am.
Difficult to say. Ultimately, when you learn to balance perfectly on this bicycle of self-investigation, when you learn to balance perfectly, you will not know it because you will no longer be there.
You are
And
separate.
the ego that started the practice Atma-vichara gets lost on the way. That is the goal. The loss of the ego is our goal. So when the ego is lost, there's no one to say, I know how to practice self-investigation. In fact, none of us here knows what is self-attention. We've all got some inkling of what is self-attention. The more we practice it, the clearer our understanding of what is, the clearer our grasp of what is self-attention. But when we experience perfect self-attention, that itself will devour us. We'll no longer be there to say, I am able to attend to myself. I can investigate myself. I have investigated myself and realized myself. I am now a jnani. There will be no I to say all those things.
So there are like people these days walking around saying, I'm self-realized now. That just won't happen, right?
Yes. They haven't even begun to follow this path.
But there is nothing wrong to say that person is self-realized. It is
Sorry?
wrong to say I'm self-realized, but it's not wrong to say that person
I think
is
it's not about wrong.
self-realized,
It's just not feasible at all. That's what my case.
Who is to say I'm self-realized? Can the ego say I'm self-realized?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. It's wrong to say I am self-realized. I understand that, but what I'm not clear is, can I say that person is self-realized? That person is self-realized.
When you don't know what you yourself are, how can you know about other people?
All right.
According to Bhagavan, all those other people are like the other people you say you saw in a dream. Supposing you have a dream that you see a jnani, and you say, "Oh, he's a great jnani," and you come and fall at his feet, and when you wake up, do you still what reality does that have? It's your own mental projection. So that's why Bhagavan often used to say, there is only one jnani, and you are that. You have to find the real jnani, you have to find within yourself. If we look outside, we see only bodies, like our body. We see people like us. By seeing Bhagavan as a person, we are making even Bhagavan into an ajnani like us. Because only ajnanis experience themselves as body. So let us first try and know what we ourselves are before we concern ourselves about whether other people are jnanis or ajnanis.
Thanks. Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Bhagavan says that the dream state is not different from the waking state.
Yes.
But why does the desire to practice Atma-vichara arise only in waking state? Or can we also practice Atma-vichara in a dream state? If we can, will that bring us to liberation?
Yes. If the more we practice in the waking state, the more the inclination to practice even while dreaming will occur. But generally, as a general rule, there's no, I mean, there is no absolute difference between waking and dream. But in so this is the state we are now in is a dream. But when we wake up in the morning and remember our dreams, some dreams are particularly vivid. And some dreams are, it's not so clear, and we are aware, but during the dream, 1 minute we were in Tiruvannamalai, next minute we were in New York, next minute we were in Delhi, next minute we were in Paris. We're talking to someone who was our father, and then suddenly it's an old friend of ours. Some dreams are very unstable, whereas other dreams are relatively speaking more stable. The more stable dreams appear more solid and more substantial, let's say. What causes the relative stability or instability of a dream is the extent to which we are attached to the body in that dream. In this present dream, we are particularly strongly attached to this body. So this dream seems to be very solid and real. And when we try and practice self-investigation in this state, because the attachment to the body is very strong, we are able to practice self-investigation to some extent without disturbing this state. But in dreams, since often in dream our attachment to a dream body is less strong than our attachment to this body, in dream well, I don't know, I've experienced this, and I've talked to other people who've also experienced this, that if in a dream you suddenly remember to investigate yourself, to turn your attention within, what often happens is you wake up. Because your attachment to that dream body is relatively weak, when even a little bit of self-attention is enough to break that attachment and bring you to this waking state. But it doesn't always bring you to this dream. It can sometimes take you to another dream. And you think, oh, I've woken up. That dream has come to an end. And then you forget about your Atma-vichara and you get caught up in that dream until you wake up again and find that you're in this dream. So, I mean, these things, all sorts of things we can experience in dream. But it is quite, just as possible as it is now to turn our attention within, it's equally possible in dream. The only state in which we cannot practice Atma-vichara is sleep. Because who is to practice Atma-vichara? The ego. Since the ego doesn't exist in sleep, what exists in sleep is only pure self-awareness. There's no need for Atma-vichara in sleep, and there's no one to do Atma-vichara in sleep. But in waking and dream, because this ego is active in those two states, it can and should do Atma-vichara as much as possible. And we now talk about waking and dream as if there was some absolute difference between them. But actually, when we are dreaming, we always think we're awake. The dream world always seems to be real, because whatever body we currently experience as ourselves is a part of a world which we perceive through the five senses of that body. The world we perceive seems to be real, because what is actually real is only ourself. When we take a body as ourself, the body seems to be real. And since the body is part of the world, the whole world seems to be real. That's why Bhagavan says, as real as all the events happening in dream, as real as all the events happening in this present state appear to be, so real all the events happening in dream appear to be at that time. But as soon as we wake up from a dream, that is, as soon as we go from one dream to another dream, our connection with that dream body, the body of the previous dream, is broken. And as soon as that connection is broken, the world which till that moment appeared to be real, we at once are able to recognize, oh, it was just a dream, it was only my own mental projection. So what makes this world appear to be real is only our identification with this body.
So self-realization is possible when we practice Atma-vichara while we are dreaming.
While we are
dreaming.
Yes, yes. Well, when else can you practice Atma-vichara except in dream? You yourself said, you started your question by saying there's no difference between waking and dream. So if you practice self-investigation now, you're practicing self-investigation in a dream. Any state that we take, any state in which phenomena appear is a state of dream. But always the current dream appears to be waking, so long as we are dreaming this dream. So why this dream seems to be waking? Because it's our current dream.
to your knowledge, are there actually people or individuals who are actually practicing Atma-vichara in their dream state?
Do you practice Atma-vichara?
I do, in the waking state, not in the dream state.
No, but even what you now call the waking state is itself a dream.
I mean, in a conventional dream state, when we are sleeping and we are dreaming.
What we call it, if you had asked me this question in your dream last night, you would have said the same thing in a conventional dream state. What you call a conventional dream state is any dream other than this dream. We recognize it as a dream, but the present dream seems to us to be waking. So any dream you are in, you will phrase the question in the same way, because you'll take that state you're in to be waking.
Okay, thank you.
And we don't have to worry about whether other people are practicing self-investigation or not. We have to practice it.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, yeah. Anybody else? Jeff? Kathy? Been quiet? Teen, Asha?
I have a question regarding ஞானி.
Yes.
As we understand, ஞானி is self-realized being, and that doesn't come and go. Like, it's not, I'm a ஞானி today, and but tomorrow maybe, and day after tomorrow not. And I'm a ஞானி only on the weekend, for example.
Yeah.
I've been reading Gita, the second chapter.
Yeah.
And in that chapter, Krishna speaks of a person of knowledge.
Yes.
As opposed, and I understand by that, a jnani.
Yes.
What he says is that a regular person can get distracted and can be a slave of his thoughts. But the jnani, even though a jnani can actually get kind of distracted, he can recollect his thoughts back again very easily. So, in my opinion, it's like, I mean, by reading this, I got the impression that there are various levels of.
Yeah, well, it's not actually various levels. What it is Bhagavad Gita is addressed to people at various different levels. So for many people, they cannot get beyond the idea of jiva mukti. But in the lifetime of a body, you realize, you become self-realized, and you continue as a self-realized person, a jiva mukta. That is, so because that's the understanding of most people, that you will find that understanding seems to be supported in many texts like Bhagavad Gita. But we have to think more deeply about it. Actually, the idea of a self-realized person is a contradiction in terms. Because if we are a person, we don't know what we actually are. When we know what we actually are, we will no longer experience ourselves as a person. So the state of jiva mukti, it's only in the perspective of the ajnani, but there's such a state as jiva mukti. We can say, I mean, nobody can deny, but Bhagavan was a jiva mukta. Bhagavan lived for 54 years in Tiruvannamalai. All those 54 years, from that day when he had that intense fear of death, he was living as a jiva mukta. Nobody can, well, I don't think anyone here is going to deny that. But Bhagavan himself said, in whose view the Bhagavan's story, we think Bhagavan's story began from the age of 16 when he was a 16-year-old boy and he got that fear of death, and then he came. That's for us the interesting bit. That's where all the interesting stories start. But actually, from Bhagavan's point of view, that's where the story came to an end. For Bhagavan, that is the boy Venkataraman The ego that was born as Venkataraman was annihilated that day in July 1896 in that upstairs room in Madurai. That ego was devoured forever. And along with that ego, the body, the world, everything else was devoured along with it, in Bhagavan's perspective. But because our ego is still here, seeing from outside, we say Bhagavan's bodily life continued for another 54 years. He, after a few months, he caught the train and came to Tiruvannamalai. He came into the temple, he embraced the Arunachaleshwara Linga, said, "Father, I have come." And then he sat in Patal Linga. The insects ate his thighs. When he was moved to Guru Murtam, then his mother came and asked him to come home, and he wrote a note in reply to her. Then Shiv Kashan Pillai came, and he gave Bhagavan gave the answer, which later became Nanya. And then other people came and asked other things, and eventually Murgana came, and for Murgana Bhagavan wrote to Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Padacchēdam. And then he, by that time he was living at the foot of the hill, and a big ashram grew up around him, and he lived up to the age of 70 and left the body on 14th April 1950. All this is true only from our perspective. From Bhagavan's perspective, none of this is true. So we have to change our perspective. To know the real story of Bhagavan, or to know the truth about Bhagavan, we have to know the truth about ourselves. So Bhagavan's story is true in our perspective, but our perspective is a wrong perspective. Bhagavan's teachings are all true from our perspective. But if what Bhagavan says, Bhagavan wrote Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, for example, I don't think any of us here are going to say what Bhagavan has written in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is not true. It's all true from our perspective. But if what Bhagavan says in Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is correct, if it is actually true, then Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is unreal. Because Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu is one of the phenomena that appear only when we rise as ego. So even the Guru's teachings in the final analysis, though they're true from the point of view of the ego, they are unreal because they appear only in the ego's perspective.
But it's a true guide, right, for us? It's
a true guide. And only by following those teachings will we come to will this ego be destroyed, and then
right.
We can say none of this is true.
Right.
For us now, it's all true.
Right. Go ahead, Kathy, you have a question.
Yeah, I do have a question. I feel like I've been evolving slowly, and I feel like I am less and less a person. You know, I cut my hair.
Sorry, I'm not hearing you very clearly.
I said,
if you like to come a little forward, I think, because you're
I said that I feel like I'm evolving slowly, if I can put it like that. There's no words I could use.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm less and less a person, and it's scary. It's becoming very scary. And I said, if I could just hold on to myself till my daughter gets married, it's always something, you know. So is that a vasana?
Yes. But the ego is not. The ego comes into existence by grasping a name and form of a person. I feel I am Michael. That which says I am Michael, that is ego. That I which has risen and grasped this name and form Michael as as itself, that is the ego. Because the ego comes into existence and stands, it endures because of its attachment to this body. It is very reluctant to let go of that attachment. You say you find it scary, but you don't yet find it scary enough. None of us have yet experienced the fear that Bhagavan experienced. When the last moment before that his ego lost its hold on the body, what arose in him, what prompted him to turn his mind within, was an intense fear of death. Because of the practice he had done previously. Sorry?
Is this a natural?
It's perfectly natural. It's natural. The opposite side of attachment is fear. If we're attached to something, we fear to lose it. We're attached to our family, to our parents, to our husband, wife, to our children, to our friends. We've got so many attachments. When anyone dear to us passes away, it's a great pain for us, isn't it? Because we fear to be separated from those things which we're attached to. So this is the nature of attachment. This is the nature of ego. The nature of ego is to have desires, to have fears, to have attachments.
It just seems like the more I'm self-inquire and I get to myself and I feel the consciousness, I feel the presence, I feel that, and it's lasting longer and longer.
Yeah.
But I'm reaching out to find something to hold, like I'm holding on to it.
Yeah. This is very, very natural, because this is another. Sometimes people used to say to Bhagavan, when I try and practice this Atma-vichara, so many thoughts arise in my mind, so many thoughts and feelings, emotions, everything arises. Bhagavan said, yes, that's right. All that is inside has to come out. Because every time any vasana arises, any desire, any fear, any attachment, we have a choice. Either we go along with that, or we turn our attention back to who is aware of that, who is fearing to lose this, to lose hold on these things. We turn our attention back. So we have that, always have that choice. Every time we choose to turn our attention back to ourselves, we are weakening that outgoing vasana. We're weakening that fear. And we're strengthening the love to hold on to ourselves. So this is...
Greatest vasana is my family.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
Everything else I've been able to do, I'm just able to go back in, but my family is like, ugh.
Yeah. This is natural. This is natural. You are in no way special in this regard. We all have to fight the same fight. Bhagavan himself, Venkataraman, but the ego that was born as Venkataraman had been through all this. That's why he was able to understand our struggle. That's why he was able to compose such wonderful poetry like ellai, where he takes the barber of a bride, praying to a bridegroom to embrace her and to take her in union with him. Such intense passion and feeling is there, expressed in those beautiful, beautiful verses of ellai. How Bhagavan was able to express, Bhagavan was beyond all these things. He had no need to sing ellai to pray or any of these things. Why he did so? Because he had been through all this. And by divine grace, he was prompted to express all those feelings, which we all have to go through. We have built up all these desires and attachments through countless lives. That's why Bhagavan says, Tondru Totu Varukindra Vashaya Vasana. That means Vashaya Vasanas, which come from time immemorial. We've had all these desires and attachments. Letting go of them is no easy task. It's painful. It's painful letting go. But let go we must, because these are what are obstructing our true happiness.
I'm going to do it.
So
it's like childbirth. Childbirth is a painful process, isn't it? But even after going through childbirth, women go back to have more and more children, because the result is worth the pain. So also the spiritual path is like childbirth. It's a painful process. Giving up our attachment to all these things, giving up our fears, our desires, all these things, separating ourselves from all these things is no easy task. But slowly, 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 by perseverance, it's possible to do it.
And the solution is
even that pain, we should welcome that pain, because that's also part of the process.
Thank you.
Michael,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if you truly follow what you're saying and this path of self-inquiry, and then and the path to dissolve your ego, I mean, don't you run the risk of coming across as aloof, withdrawn, discompassionate or whatnot for the people that are maybe your immediate like family members? I mean, if you really follow what you're saying,
no, it's not. People who, when we look at the world, there are a lot of good people in the world, there are a lot of bad people. I mean, it's no black and white, but there are a lot of people we can say they're definitely veering on the bad end of the spectrum. There are a lot of people who are on the good end of the spectrum. People who are on the bad end of the spectrum, they're people with strong egos, strong desires, strong attachments. When we come to follow this path, our desires and attachments are weakened. Our mind is purified. So the ego is, in that sense, the ego is weakened. The weaker the ego is, the less difference we see between ourselves and others. There are some people who are, for example, are very cruel. They don't care how much other people suffer. They're ready even to exploit them, to make them work as almost like slaves for them, or to exploit them in so many ways, because all they care about is my happiness. My happiness alone matters. I don't care about anyone else. That is an extremely strong ego. When we follow this path, this ego is attenuated. It becomes less and less strong. So we feel less and less difference between ourselves and others. So we feel we cannot bear to see others suffering, because we feel we ourselves are suffering when we see others suffering. This is all the result of a purified mind. So the more we follow this path, the purer our mind will become, the more caring, kind, and compassionate we will naturally be. Inwardly in our heart, we may be detached, but outwardly, we will behave in a very caring, kind, and compassionate way. Who is the kindest of all people who has ever walked on the face of this world? Is there anyone kinder than Bhagavan? When Bhagavan was once walking on the north side of the hill, his thigh brushed against a bush in which there was a hornet's nest. He stood there patiently and let the hornet sting him, because he felt, I came unwelcomed and I disturbed this, though I didn't do it intentionally, I disturbed this nest of these hornets. So I have done a wrong to them. Let them be satisfied by stinging this thigh. Because he felt so much remorse for an action which he didn't even do with intention. So he was so kind and compassionate to those hornets, even though they were stinging his leg and causing such intense pain.
He didn't move, he just stood there.
He just stood there and let them finish. So that is the supreme kindness and compassion. Why? Because he saw himself in each one of those hornets. The I in each of those hornets. Okay, those hornets are not speaking any human language, so they don't say I or je or nan or aham or anything. They don't know all these words, but they all have that self-awareness. The same self-awareness that shines in you and me is shining in those hornets also. And according to Bhagavan, he is that self-awareness shining in the hearts of all beings, from Vishnu down to the smallest ant or the hornet or anything. So he saw himself in those hornets. He felt how those hornets felt. And so he, supreme compassion, he allowed them just to sting his thigh until they were fully satisfied. So there's no contradiction between being kind and compassionate and loving and affectionate and caring and following this path. In fact, quite the opposite. The more we truly follow this path, the more kind and caring we'll be. The less we will like to cause harm to anyone, cause hurt to anyone, or even to see anyone being hurt.
You use the word holy indifference, right?
Sorry?
Somewhere you use the word holy indifference.
Yes, I think that's a word that Christian mystics use. Holy indifference. That is vairagya. The true vairagya is we are indifferent to all things for ourselves. But when we see, like, Bhagavan has no desires, attachments, or anything. But sometimes when people used to come to Bhagavan and tell of calamities that have befallen, their husband or their wife had passed away or a child had passed away, Bhagavan sometimes, listening to such stories, he would be shedding tears. Because he's just like a clear mirror, so all that he felt, all that other people feel.
Yes, Stephen.
And also one other thing about this thing about caring, for example, for one's family. If we have a family, we have to do things for it. We have to provide for our family. We have to provide for our children's education. We have to take care of our family in so many ways. That is no obstacle whatsoever to following this path, because who is caring, all those actions that are necessary to care for our family, they're actions done by what? By three instruments, by body, speech, and mind. Are we these three instruments? If we have this body, we have this mind, then the actions of our body, speech, and mind are actions done by us. But are we these things? The path of Atma-vichara is separating ourselves from these instruments and from their actions. So if it is our prarabdha to be married, to have 10, 20 children or whatever, and if it's our prarabdha to work hard and to provide for all of them, it will all happen. But we are still, we have a choice. Do we allow our mind to go out, or do we turn our mind within? If we turn our mind within, all the actions that are to happen according to prarabdha will continue as they are meant to continue. Only the agamya will not be done, because there's no, our will is not interfering. Because we are turning our attention within, surrendering ourselves to Bhagavan, we are not acting of our own volition. So all these things go on according to prarabdha. So there's no incompatibility between, well, if it's our prarabdha to be a sannyasi, we will be a sannyasi. If it's our prarabdha to be married, we'll be married. If it's our prarabdha to have children, we'll have children. If it's our prarabdha to have elderly parents we have to care for, it will happen. These aren't things in our that we don't have the freedom to choose what we are to experience in this lifetime. We have freedom to choose to try to experience things that we're not destined to experience, or to avoid things which we are destined to experience. We have that freedom. And we also have freedom to want to do the things that we are destined to do anyway. So we cannot, prarabdha and agamya. Agamya means the actions we do of our own will. Prarabdha means the actions that we are made to do in order to experience what we are destined to experience. These are like, if you've got two multicolored threads that are identical in appearance, and if you bundle them up into a ball and make a tight ball of them, you cannot point out any thread in that ball and say this belongs to thread A, this belongs to thread B. We cannot distinguish them. We cannot distinguish which belongs to which thread. Likewise, we cannot distinguish which actions belong to prarabdha, which belong to agamya. We can, that's beyond our ability. But how we can avoid doing agamya. Agamya is the actions we do by our own will, by surrendering our will to Bhagavan, by trying to turn our attention within, by making by minimizing the impetus and the momentum, enthusiasm with which we go outwards. We will slowly be doing less agamya, because we're surrendering our will more to the will of Bhagavan. So we don't have to concern ourselves about outward actions. What we have to concern ourselves in is the choices we make, the desires we have, whether we want to turn our attention outwards or whether we want to turn our attention inwards. Or if we turn our attention outwards, what we attend to. Do we attend to how to make money in the stock market, how to experience all sorts of worldly pleasures, or do we attend to developing love for God? I mean, there's so many choices we have. The choices are by our will. We are free to choose anything we want. We have freedom of choice. We don't have freedom to change what we're destined to experience, but we can choose to try and change it, to want to change it. So it's our choices which matter. So we have to, that's what Bhagavan says in verse 3 of Upadesh Undya. But in Sanskrit, Bhagavan says chitta sodakam, which literally means purifying the will. But in Tamil, he says karate tirati. That means rectifying the thinking, basically, is what it means. What drives our thinking? It's our will. It's the choices we make. So that's what we have to rectify.
Right.
Michael, you talked about the hornet's nest, and you got to a place where you described his Bhagavan being with the hornet and allowing the hornet to sting him.
Yeah.
And I recognized a caring moment in you in telling that story.
Yeah.
That's one I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
So describe for me, is that some attachment that has me be like this? Or is it something else? So sometimes I feel...
The fact that we are moved by an act of compassion itself shows the seed of compassion is in our heart. We may not be able to do what Bhagavan does. If we were stung by hornets, we would run a mile. We would do all we could to get away from them, because we don't have that supreme vairagya that Bhagavan had, or that supreme compassion that Bhagavan had. But the very fact that there are many people in this world who will think, oh, what a silly story. They won't be moved by it, because they won't understand the love and compassion with which Bhagavan did it. The fact that we are moved by this story itself shows Bhagavan has already put the seeds of that compassion in our heart.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you.
One more question.
Yeah, okay, last question from Keva.
Michael, one more question, Michael, before we end the session. Bhagavan often says that self-investigation is the only way to realize our true or real self.
Yes.
Do you think Buddha practiced self-investigation so that he attained nirvana when he did meditation?
Yes, I believe so. I believe sooner or later everyone has to follow this in order to attain that. I mean, it's logical. Our aim is to know what we actually are. How can we know what we actually are how can we see what we actually are? To use metaphorical terms, see doesn't literally mean see with eyes, but how can we see what we actually are if we don't look at ourselves? How can you see the sun if you don't look at it? So everyone who experiences their real nature whose egos are annihilated must have followed this path. And quite probably Buddha taught this path, but unfortunately, Buddha didn't, unlike Bhagavan, Buddha didn't write down his teachings. In fact, his teachings, the earliest records of his teachings were several hundred years after he left the body. And by that time, there were some people recorded one version in Pali, other people recorded other versions in other languages. So that's why they're different. The Theravadan Buddhists like to feel that because they're Pali texts are the most ancient texts, therefore they're the original ones. But there were other oral traditions that were passed down through other channels, but at about the same time or soon after, recorded variations of those teachings in other languages. So none of us actually know what Buddha taught. Because when things are passed on from one person to another, it wasn't even a like if Buddha hadn't written, at least if he had composed verses, and people could have learned those verses by heart, we could say, okay, that's likely to be maybe a few mistakes people made while passing on that poetry, but more or less that would be what he taught. But he didn't even write poetry. I mean, he didn't even compose poetry. So there was the oral tradition was not a poetic tradition, but a prose tradition. So when things are conveyed through prose, I tell you something, what you understand, you tell someone else, and then they tell someone else, and they tell someone else. After it's gone through so many people, things get distorted. So what the original teachings of Buddha were, we really don't know. But fortunately for us, Bhagavan himself wrote the core principles of his teachings in his own, well, sometimes in prose like in Nāṇya, but often in poetry. So that is the best way of preserving spiritual teachings.
To my knowledge, this is the first time in many centuries that you have a perfect jnani write down the teachings.
Yes, well, I mean, there have been others. I think Tai Manava, whom Bhagavan often used to quote, whose verses are very, very deep in meaning. Yeah. I think he was only, I don't know, just a few hundred years ago. He wasn't such an ancient sage. But Bhagavan is unique in so many ways, very, very special. So obviously, there's a divine purpose for Bhagavan to come and there are many people who spend a lifetime studying Advaita philosophy and studying all the scriptures and the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras and the commentaries on them and everything. But still, they don't have the simple clarity that we can get from Bhagavan, because Bhagavan has presented things in a very, very simple way that can easily be understood. And he's closed up all the loopholes. The old teachings were often, the teachings were correct, but they were misunderstood by people. And so they were misinterpreted. Bhagavan had presented things in such a way to make misinterpretation very difficult. We can still misinterpret if we want, and you can misinterpret anything, but there's less ambiguity. Bhagavan has been is very clear on what he teaches.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Right. All thanks are due to Bhagavan. We are all nothing without Bhagavan.